Why does all civilization keep war alive? As I tell you the reason, you will learn the patterns that have caused all war in history. But that's not all. I will also answer the question on how humanity could end all war and why it might be impossible. When I started researching this topic, I discovered something extremely interesting. Two main patterns that lead to wars. These patterns are consistent across all wars that have happened since ancient times. I believe this discovery might be the key to ending all war, and I think the second pattern is the most important. So make sure you stay till the end. In order to understand these patterns, we need to go all the way back to around 1500 BC to the Battle of Megiddo. This was one of the earliest recorded battles in history, taking place in ancient Egypt under Pharaoh Thutmose III. This battle happened because Egypt wanted to take back a strategic city, Megiddo. This city was controlled by Canaanite city-states. Pharaoh Thutmose III launched a campaign to reclaim Megiddo, leading his troops through a narrow mountain pass that exposed them to potential ambush. However, the bold maneuver paid off, and the Egyptian army emerged at the gates of Megiddo, catching the Canaanite forces by surprise. In one move, Thutmose III's forces laid siege to the city, cutting off supplies and isolating the Canaanite coalition. After 7 months, the starving defenders surrendered, and Megiddo fell back into Egyptian hands. This conflict shows us that the reason for war is the desire for power. However, this isn't the only recurring pattern I have noticed. To discover the second reason, let's look at the rise of the Roman Empire. In the early centuries BCE, Rome was a growing city-state looking to secure its place on the Italian peninsula. Resources were limited, and Rome needed more fertile land to support its expanding population. So, Rome began a campaign of conquest, starting with neighboring tribes and territories in Italy. These early victories gave them control over agricultural land and access to crucial resources like timber and iron, fueling Rome's growth. Rome soon got into conflict with Carthage, a powerful city-state in North Africa that controlled key trade routes in the Western Mediterranean. The rivalry erupted into the Punic Wars, a series of conflicts driven by a desire for economic dominance. Carthage had wealth, access to valuable trade networks, and control over fertile lands in North Africa and Spain. Rome wanted that wealth and control. So, in this example, we see that economic gain is also a reason that war exists. So now, if we combine the two patterns, we have the reason for all war. The reason war exists must be either the desire for power or economic gain. I cracked the code. I now know how we could spread peace all over the world. Or do I? Well, that's what I thought in the beginning, but the more I looked into it, the more I realized that there must be another pattern, which I did not notice during my research. As I looked into modern conflicts like World War II, sure, I noticed the previous pattern, but the main pattern I saw was something completely else. During my investigation, I noticed a pattern throughout history. Wars and conflicts always happen between people with different nationalities or different opinions. To understand this, let's look at the Second World War. World War II was a violent clash of ideologies and national identities. On one side, you had the Axis powers, primarily Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan. These regimes were unified by aggressive nationalism and imperial expansion, believing they were superior to other nations and cultures. On the other side, the Allied powers represented a diverse coalition with different political ideologies, from democratic capitalism to communism. The core of the conflict can be traced to ideological divides. Nazi Germany, led by Adolf Hitler, was driven by a racist, nationalist ideology that promoted racial superiority and sought the expansion of German territory through conquest. The regime's actions, including the invasion of Poland in 1939, were fueled by a belief in the supremacy of the German nation and the need for Lebensraum, living space, in Eastern Europe. So this was it. The last pattern I noticed is that every war in history started because of differences. If we look back to ancient Egypt or the Roman Empire, each of these battles wouldn't have started if the people shared the same ideology, religion, and nationality. So if the answer is this simple, why do wars keep starting? Despite many attempts at peace, humans still continue to fight. Many have tried to break this cycle, but for some reason, it seems impossible, even though we have discovered the pattern causing all war. However, if we want to eliminate this pattern, we would have to unite every nation, language, ideology, and religion on Earth, which is physically impossible. So, ending all war and conflict must be impossible. But what if there's another way? What if the solution isn't just about preventing war, but fundamentally changing how we perceive conflict? What if instead of trying to eliminate the problem, we work together on actually solving it? The solution to war is cooperation, making war impractical and forming strong bonds between nations. I think that is the only way humans will ever stand a chance against ending all war. Here's why. In the post-World War II era, countries that were once bitter enemies have come together through cooperation. The European Union, for example, was born out of the idea that economic and political cooperation could prevent another war between France and Germany. Today, these countries are united by mutual interests, and the EU is a symbol of what's possible when nations set aside their differences for the greater good. Similarly, the creation of the United Nations in 1945 aimed at fostering dialogue and diplomacy among nations. These examples show that when nations work together, pooling resources, sharing knowledge, and promoting peaceful interactions, conflict becomes less likely. The key is to make war seem unnecessary, impractical, and undesirable.